A new day is dawning on a brand new absolute Earth, complete with its own new Dark Knight. What does this mean? Well, let's hop into the pages of Absolute Batman issue number 1, a brand new series from the superstar duo of Scott Snyder and Nick Dragotta, and find out together, shall we? So then, as we join the book, we're at the Gotham Zoo many years ago. We see a young Bruce is actually on a school trip with his whole class. Of course, Bruce doesn't seem to have much interest in the other animals, he only wants to see the bat exhibit. Yep, starting them nice and young, aren't we? Now, flash forward to the present, and the book actually ends up pulling off a pretty damn excellent fake-out. We see a lone figure on a high-tech motorbike, cruising the dark and dystopian streets of Gotham. If you're like me, you probably thought, ah yes, this is definitely an older Bruce Wayne, and we're totally riffing on the new Batman movie, but no, wait! Turns out the mystery biker is actually a very grizzled Alfred here doing his best Captain Price from Call of Duty impression. Yes, it seems once again in another world on another Earth, Alfred isn't a kindly Shakespeare-loving butler, but instead a serious British spy. One who his bosses pulled away from a very important mission in Asia to instead investigate the current threat that is holding Gotham City in its grasp. It would seem that there is a brand new, incredibly violent, incredibly chaotic, and incredibly well-connected new criminal gang calling themselves the Party Animals. No one really seems to know where these guys came from or what they're after, but what we know for sure is that the murder rates in Gotham have absolutely skyrocketed ever since these dudes came to town. Agent Alfred's handlers tell him to go on a fact-finding mission with these guys, but not actually engage. However, as Alfred soon learns, he's not the only one actually investigating the Party Animals, as there is a mysterious third party who also has an invested interest in them. One that Alfred's bosses says that it's a-okay to terminate should he need to. Now, it's from there we transition on over to Croc's gym, where once again the comic ends up pulling an excellent fake-out. We see a slight man hitting the heavy bag who looks a lot like how Bruce Wayne is normally shown. In the main universe, of course, this guy ends up getting pushed aside by this world's real Bruce Wayne, who, man, you know, Bruce was always pretty big and muscular, but this absolute Bruce is built like a goddamn fridge with legs. Pfft, absolute Batman, more like absolute unit, am I right? Now, if you read the special prologue issue for Absolute DC, then you would know that the whole conceit of this brand new Earth is that heroes are on the back foot and their origins are very different. And for Bruce, we quickly discover that in this absolute world, he is not the son of privilege, quite the opposite. He grew up on the mean streets, struggling to survive. But more importantly, it means the friends and company he keeps are very different. You see, Bruce actually grew up with all of the people who would end up becoming his villains in the other Earth: Killer Croc, Penguin, Riddler, Two-Face, Catwoman. In fact, as we see in a frame picture, they were actually the other kids on that field trip to the zoo. Oh, but wait, it gets better. In this world too, the Waynes aren't old money masters of Gotham. Thomas was actually just a teacher. In fact, he was Bruce's teacher that day at the zoo, and his mom was just a workaday social worker. So this means that this Batman has no butler, no mansion, no cave even. The whole change in fortunes too also end up extending to the real villain of the piece, as we are introduced to a black-masked individual, the secret leader of the Party Animals, a man by the name of Roman. Currently, Roman is hosting the leaders of the Falcone and Maroni crime families on his mega yacht, and seriously, if you have a mega yacht, you are not a good person. This is actually one hell of a major reinvention when it comes to Black Mask. Now he's some sort of ultra-rich oligarch who travels the world collecting famous death masks of famous people from throughout history. He also seems to have a DJ who might be some sort of mutant with tentacles on his head and a female attendant with a mask very similar to his. Roman makes it very clear to the mob that the hierarchy of power in this new Gotham City is set to change as he murders the old guard and adds their faces to his ever-growing mask collection. Now, all these seemingly unrelated stories end up dovetailing together at a very important city council meeting that night, one presided over by Mayor Jim Gordon. A mayor who managed to depose the previous corrupt Mayor Hill, but who is quickly starting to lose the respect of the citizenry due to his inability ability to get the party animals under control. We also see Bullock is there, and hey, he's actually commissioner in this world. One nice woman in the crowd actually does speak up on Gordon's behalf, but her timing couldn't be worse, as it's at that very moment a whole army of party animals ends up busting in. Agent Alfred is on a nearby rooftop and ends up seeing all of this as it happens. It also means that he has the perfect front row seat for when Batman ultimately ends up making his very grand public debut. And oh man, let's talk about this new Batman for a second. Literally every part of his costume is a weapon. That weird new cape that extends to the arms and splits down the middle like a real set of bat wings, yeah, he can actually use that to trip up his opponents and throw them like they were footballs. Those really long, really spiky bat ears, yeah, they're not just bat ears, they're actual knives that he uses to stab up the party animals when they get too close. And finally, we have the big, chunky bat symbol on his chest that a lot of people talked about when the art first got revealed for this brand new series. Well, guess what? It's not just a logo, it's a frickin' battle axe. One that he uses to chop off the hand of a particularly mouthy party animal. Even the back of the costume is filled with spikes. Agent Alfred is pretty impressed by this Batman's form, but he's even more impressed that despite turning himself into a walking armory, he actively goes out of his way to not take lives. Though Alfred certainly doesn't share that kind of morality and draws on him right away with a super advanced military shotgun, only for this Batman to end up getting the better of him anyway. It's after that Alfred becomes kind of obsessed with this Batman and what sort of events could lead a person to becoming this sort of individual. You see, it's after that all the different pieces start falling into place. In this universe, Bruce didn't lose his parents one night in Crime Alley. Instead, his teacher father Thomas heroically sacrificed his own life to save the lives of Bruce and the other children when a mass shooter decided to target the zoo on that faithful day. After that, Bruce's life spiraled for a bit. He got involved in petty crime, before eventually deciding to go back to school and rebuilding himself. He studied chemistry, criminology, martial arts, and everything that he would need for his brand new life. But this is where things get really interesting. You see, when Bruce returned to Gotham, he saw fit to become an expert in the city itself. He started working for the municipalities. He took jobs at the power grid, at trash collection, at local government. And he still works there today. In fact, as we see, Bruce spends his days rebuilding the stuff that he and the party animals broke the night before. But here's the really surprising thing. In this absolute Earth, Martha Wayne is actually still alive. In fact, she was the woman who took up for Gordon before the party animals attacked. And believe it or not, it's learning that fact that actually probably saves Bruce's life from an assassin's bullet, as Alfred just can't bring himself to kill this guy. As apparently one of the other big reasons Alfred was willing to take this mission in Gotham City was because he hoped to reunite with his own daughter, Julia. And shattering another family would kind of end up making him one giant hypocrite, yeah? Still though, Alfred does feel the need to confront Bruce, which he does at his base of operation. Again, remember, there's no Batcave in this universe, so instead Bruce decides to set up shop in a series of unfinished skyscrapers owned by foreign investors, who have no intention of actually finishing the buildings and just choose to use them as part of their bigger real estate portfolio. Hey, just like in real life. Once again, Alfred comes in here completely half-cocked, thinking that he has Batman dead to rights, only for Alfred to get shot with his own experimental shotgun. Don't worry though, Bruce was sure to modify it to make sure it's no longer lethal, and just to really rub some salt in the wound, Batman also decides to steal Alfred's motorbike. Which means that Alfred's own mission in Gotham just got a lot more complex. But hey, you might also be wondering, what was up with that Singapore mission that Alfred got pulled away from? Who was he after there? Well, funny thing about that. Turns out Agent Alfred was investigating another multi-billionaire international criminal, a guy who keeps changing his name a lot. Sometimes it's Jack, sometimes it's Arthur. No one knows much about this guy. He's a real ghost, but what they know for certain is that he is deeply, deeply unfunny and super serious, so much to the point that people have taken to calling him the Joker. And so that was Absolute Batman issue number 1, everybody, and oh man, they really did leave it all out there on the field with this one, didn't they? So much actually happened here, I'm not exactly sure where to begin. It certainly lives up to the brand new Absolute DC promise of being a 100% fresh, 100% new starting point. You really don't need to know anything about Batman or any previous run to get right in and enjoy this series. In many ways too, this also feels like Scott Snyder's own personal take on Dark Knight Returns. I mean, all the hallmarks are kinda there, right? A city in crisis, a brand new gang of criminals who doesn't play by the rules, a physically bigger and more intimidating Batman dealing out more brutal justice. The big difference, though, is that creatively, this series seems to ask the question, how much can we actually invert the character of Batman and his world while also still keeping true to the themes and ideas of Batman? I find it interesting that in this world created by Darkseid, Batman is actually poor and doesn't have his regular privileges, while all of his villains now seem to be super rich and super well connected themselves. It makes for an interesting dichotomy. Then you have the more topical changes too. Now, instead of Bruce's parents dying as victims of random street crime, now they're regular everyday working people who became victims of mass shootings, something that, again, if you've been reading the news, seems to be a continuing societal problem with no end in the United States. At the center of it too, you have this big cat and mouse game between Batman and Alfred, now no longer son and father figure. Will we eventually see them cool on each other and work together, or will they remain antagonistic throughout the series? I don't know, but I'll definitely be interested to check back in and see how it all ends up shaking out. Overall, I thought this series, though, offers a ton of great new storytelling potential, solid art. Scott Snyder's writing, as always, is on point. I would give this one a very much well-deserved 8.5 out of 10.
Hey there everyone, it's your pal Cape Joel again, and if you're seeing my face right now, that means you watched to the end of the video, and I'll always be grateful for that. Retention helps in this crazy YouTube game, and so does becoming a patron. If you head on down to the description, you can find a link to my Patreon page. Recently just redid all the tiers. A lot of cool stuff offering up there, exclusive commentaries, exclusive polls, behind-the-scenes concept art for Capes and Quest. That's the brand new D&D show I've started soon. Never been a better time to become a patron. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month and help the channel grow and, help me continue to deliver content like what you just saw. So I want to thank you all, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.